We all remember the 1993 classic starring Bill Murray, but if you're like me, maybe you didn't know that they turned Groundhog Day into a musical in 2017. It started with a limited run in London where it won 2 Olivier Awards before heading to Broadway. But despite being nominated for 7 Tonys, it closed after only 6 months. I've recently discovered this musical and instantly fell in love with it, but I wasn't quite sure why. And so, I wanted to take a moment to explore my thoughts and figure out why I love it so much. With so many remakes nowadays, it's rare to find a piece of media that's an improvement over the original. It's hard to build upon a cultural staple like the '93 movie.
Ned! Ryerson!
But in my opinion, the musical identifies some core flaws in the story and sets them right. Though it might make sense to label one as the original and the other an adaptation, both the movie and the musical were written by Danny Rubin. And so, it might make more sense to label them as first draft versus second draft, taking what's already there and furthering it into a more cohesive product. The first, most obvious difference in Groundhog Day the musical is just that it's a musical.
You gotta love life, you gotta love life, you gotta love life insurance. I know.
But that doesn't only mean added singing. It also brings a heightened level of energy. Everything is exaggerated, giving the characters more opportunities to express themselves, whether that be by speaking, singing, or dancing. While the movie is limited to real-world spaces of its setting, the characters in the musical can utilize the space of the stage. That means running, waving, and exaggerated physical acting. There is also a difference in the townspeople's overall attitude. In the movie, the crowd is disappointed by the news of more snow.
Sorry, folks. 6 more weeks of winter.
In the musical, they are endlessly optimistic, even after the bad news.
6 more weeks of winter!
The joyful nature of the townspeople is a great contrast to Phil, in the center of it all, the only one not having a good time. Phil's character arc is the central purpose to the whole show. At its core, Groundhog Day is the story of a cynical man who must learn to become a better human. And to accomplish that, he goes through a slow process of growth. Both the movie and the musical share a near identical order of events. However, it's in the way that the characters react to these events where the narratives differ. In order to better analyze Phil's character arc, I want to organize the plot into a graph. There are 2 main directions in which Phil reacts, which I'll call chaos and apathy, with grounded between the 2. With the exaggerated energy of its medium, Phil in the musical seems to reach higher highs and lower lows. But both versions of Phil switch between these 2 extremes throughout the story, driven by the circumstances that he's faced with. In fact, Phil's path to redemption is so varied, it could be logically separated into 4 different characters: the jerk, the fool, detached, and humbled. Going through these 4 transitions can give us an outline of Phil's story. His starting point is a self-centered jerk, but still realistic enough that he feels grounded in reality. Once Phil realizes that he has full freedom, he reverts to his most basic desires, gallivanting foolishly without a care for the consequences. Phil next decides to court Rita, but that only ends in failure. He falls into a depression that leaves him feeling cold and detached from the world. Finally, only after spending a day with Rita does Phil realize that he can learn to embrace others over himself. And so, both versions of Phil come back down to reach a final point of humility. Though movie Phil and musical Phil go on the same arc, they reach different extremes, partially due to the way that they react, and thus their motivations, being subtly different. For example, at the beginning of the story, Phil in the movie reacts rather quickly to realizing that the day is repeating. After noticing the lack of snow outside, Phil immediately begins to act chaotically, taking very little prompting to believe that it really still is February 2nd.
What day is this? It's February 2nd. Groundhog Day. Yeah. Sorry. I thought it was yesterday.
Yet in the musical, Phil brings his bag with him because he expects to be checking out. It takes him a while before he considers believing that it might still be yesterday.
What day is it?
It's February 2nd! Groundhog Day!
No, that was yesterday!
Okay.
He blames the strange occurrences on everyone else, continuing to think of rational explanations. Though movie Phil reacts earlier, he continues to stay rational through the 3rd day. By the musical keeping Phil more grounded in the beginning, it gives him more room to act comedically when he does get to the point of freaking out on the 3rd day. Here we're coming to the high point of Phil's chaos. And the character of the fool is played rather differently in both versions. Phil's antics in the movie include punching Ned, stealing from an armored car, and sleeping with Nancy. In the musical, Phil's embrace of freedom allows him to do all these things as well, but it is portrayed as more over-the-top and cartoonish. Phil dances around the stage with the vibrant spirit of a party. As the crest of chaos subsides, Phil comes back down to real life and sets his sights on wooing Rita. Where the two stories really start to differ is in the role that Rita plays within Phil's story. In the movie, Rita is introduced early and shares many scenes with Phil throughout the first act of the film. Phil constantly goes back to Rita, as if she is a thought always in the back of his mind. Telling Rita about his problem is the first thing that Phil does when he repeats the day. He calls Rita's name while making out with Nancy, and shows off his junk food eating with Rita present. By comparison, the musical is a lot less fixated on Rita at the beginning. Phil shares only 5 brief scenes with her on the first 2 days, and then barely interacts with her at all until nearly halfway through the show. Phil even flippantly avoids her when she attempts to approach him.
Phil, can we do this now?
Wait your turn.
Phil, and by extension the narrative, has been ignoring Rita by the time that she gets her own song. Here, after spending so long in Phil's head, we finally get to hear some of Rita's perspective.
What an asshole! I'm sorry.
One notable difference with Rita's character in the movie is something that I like to call unearned familiarity. Throughout Phil's loops, Rita seems to retain a sense of acquaintance with him, almost tricking the audience into feeling like Rita is growing a connection over time. By contrast, in the musical, Rita makes it a point to reintroduce herself each time she meets Phil.
There you are. I'm Rita.
Rita! Phil!
Really emphasizing the fact that this is the first day they've met. They don't know each other at all. The iconic scenes of Phil endlessly redoing his dates with Rita are mostly the same between both mediums, with one key difference. Whereas in the movie, Phil keeps redoing the day so that he can get all the details right.
That's my favorite drink.
Mine too.
In the musical, Phil has to redo the day because he keeps screwing it up.
Oh, dear Lord.
Phil in the movie is rather successful at improving his dates. But in the musical, it's always messed up by some aspect of Phil's personality. While the movie Rita is at the mercy of Phil's plans, musical Rita is given a lot more agency in their relationship, never afraid to abruptly end the date herself. In the movie, Phil's gradual perfection of the day leads to him slow dancing with Rita in the gazebo.
But you don't know me. No, you don't know me.
Culminating in him successfully bringing her to his room, where his ruse finally falls apart.
That's for making me care about you.
Though the movie does have the deserved slap montage, it comes after a sequence of growing romance. But in the musical, his advancements are portrayed for what they are. Creepy, not romantic.
It's the perfect love.
It's what?
Can't you feel it?
No, it's not love.
Yeah, why not?
Phil never succeeds. He never dances or brings her upstairs. No matter how perfect he can make the day, Phil realizes that, at his essence, he is not a man that Rita could love. Here is where both versions of Phil drop down into the region of apathy. He goes through the events of the day unfeeling, detached from his emotions, and without direction. Since the musical heightens the energy in many aspects, that means it's not afraid to dip into the more dramatic elements. Phil's confrontation with his own mortality is played for laughs in the movie.
He might be okay. Well, no, probably not now.
It stays mostly in comedy, and while it does touch on some serious tones, they are passed over briefly. But Phil in the musical is given a lot more time to really sing through his thoughts.
You find a way, another day, surrounded by a cast of half-wit bastards, grinning masks.
The musical dedicates a full song to exploring the dark place that Phil has come to. While this is the lowest point in Phil's arc in the movie, I would argue that that's not true in the musical. Rather, it's in the following 2 scenes, at the diner and later the park, where Phil has fully succumbed to his apathy, that he is at his lowest. This same diner scene exists in both versions, but it's important to notice that all 4 characters, both Phil's and both Rita's, seem to have different motivations than their counterparts. Phil states his intentions in the movie.
Why are you telling me this?
Because I want you to believe in me. Please believe me. You've got to believe me.
Phil in the musical makes it clear as well.
Phil, slow down! Wait, stop!
Just leave me alone. Doesn't matter, nothing makes any difference.
While movie Phil actively tries to convince Rita, Phil in the musical only wants to get away from her. Rita in the movie is intrigued, convinced by Phil to spend the day with him.
We're going to stay ahead of the weather.
However, in the musical, Rita is the one doing the convincing.
You can't help me.
Have I ever tried?
She has to make an effort to get through to Phil, to get him to feel again. While Rita in the movie takes a passive role in this scene, Rita in the musical is the active one. This appears to show a clearer cause and effect. Rita's optimism is what inspires Phil to better himself, and it's because of Rita that Phil escapes his depressive slump. At the end of this day, Phil in the movie silently declares his ongoing love and awakens bittersweetly. In the musical, it ends with Phil's solemn acceptance and awakening with a new sense of purpose. This is an important distinction. Phil in the movie appears to retain his desire to love Rita throughout the end of the story, whereas Phil in the musical takes her worldview to heart, but understands that he doesn't have a place in her life. After Phil gradually yet diligently works to improve himself, Rita sees the change in him and invites him out for coffee. The two moments are remarkably similar, but with a very slight change of tone. Phil in the movie answers quickly, as if he expected her offer.
Well, where are you going? Would you like to get a cup of coffee?
I'd love to. Can I have a rain check? I've got some errands I've got to run, okay?
Pausing to look at Rita with longing. In the musical, Phil answers slowly, genuinely taken aback by Rita's interest in him.
Hey, you want to grab a cup of coffee or something before we head back in the van?
Oh. I'm not sure I have time.
No big deal.
No, but thank you for asking. That makes me very happy. Yeah, maybe another time.
Sure.
Good. See you later.
This scene exemplifies a key difference between the final point of character growth of the two Phils: humility. Both Phil's arcs are going towards a point of humbled reflection. However, the movie Phil continues to act rather selfishly, such as kicking out a child from her piano lesson or expecting thanks for his good deeds.
You little brat. You have never thanked me.
Take Phil's confrontation with Ned. In the movie, Phil hugs Ned uncomfortably long, with the intention of driving him away.
I gotta get going. It's good to see you, Phil.
Which is great for comedy. It's a very funny scene, but it's a bit mean-spirited for a character who has supposedly become selfless. Contrast this with the musical, where Phil takes the opportunity to honestly listen to what Ned has to say, and takes a walk with him.
Listen, Ned, I was gonna go grab some coffee. You wanna walk with me?
Great. It is so good to see you.
You too, Nick.
Phil even includes Rita in his marathon of good deeds, not because he wants anything in return, but because he genuinely cares about her.
You brought me chili from the cook-off.
Yeah.
Are you okay?
I just can't seem to retain cardio fitness.
The difference in attitude of the final two Phils affects the story in a fundamental way: how the loop is broken. During the final night before Phil wakes up on February 3rd, he says a line that could be interpreted as the reason that he breaks the loop.
I know your face so well, I could have done it with my eyes closed. No matter what happens tomorrow, or for the rest of my life, I'm happy now. Because I love you.
In the musical, his line is quite different.
But I'm here, and I'm fine, and I'm seeing you for the first time.
Almost the exact opposite. Phil is not in love, but he's okay. And he's seeing her through new eyes because he has a new outlook on life. I would argue that this means the loop is broken in a very slightly different way. In the movie, Phil succeeds by Rita falling in love with him, and to do that, he had to become a better person. In the musical, Phil's success comes from him becoming a better person. Rita's affection is only a bonus. The last point I want to mention is the role of side characters in the narrative. The movie has the luxury of many actors, extras, and sets, while the musical is limited to only 20 or so performers. This isn't a bad thing, as it enables the reuse of characters. For example, there's a sheriff character who tells Phil about the blizzard, arrests him for reckless driving, and carries the money that Phil steals. In the movie, these roles are fulfilled by 3 different characters. There are many other examples of characters recurring in different situations, which really makes the setting feel like a small town, like you're always running into the same people because everyone knows each other. All the people of Punxsutawney feel like they have their own interesting lives that Phil could get to know. In fact, there's even a song about the very idea that everyone has their own stories if you only take the time to listen. Coming from this point of view, it's all the more satisfying when Phil finally does open up to embrace others. Personally, I feel like the musical is an improvement over the film in a lot of different ways, that I can no longer watch the movie without comparing it. I think the movie is wholly rooted as a romantic comedy, which some people might prefer, but to me the characters in the musical come across as more heartfelt and genuine. The movie sometimes undermines its lessons for the sake of putting comedy first. And the musical is still very much a comedy, but I feel like the jokes land better when the character is more well-defined. By giving Phil and Rita a more realistic relationship, exploring some of the more dramatic elements, and smoothing out Phil's final arc, I think the musical tells the same story but in a more successful way. If you thought this was interesting, this is by no means a replacement for watching the show. I've purposefully left out a lot of great stuff, whole songs and sequences, in the hopes of leaving it unspoiled. I definitely suggest sitting down and watching this musical if you can. I would love to see it live someday, but in the meantime, I'm just glad that any recording of it exists. Supposedly, it's planning to come back to London sometime in the next year, so I really hope that it can find its audience and get the run that it deserves. I think this show is an honorable tribute to the Groundhog Day story, while still taking the opportunity to improve in places where the original could have been better. And I hope that more people can appreciate it as a fantastic piece of storytelling. Thanks for watching. I've never made a video essay before, and I usually do animation on my channel. I'm working on a Groundhog Day animation right now, which I should have finished in a few months, so look out for that. Who knows, maybe I'll make more video essays in the future, but I hope that you enjoyed this one.